A record number of borrowers are 60 days behind on their mortgage in Canada. And not only that, you've now got housing prices that are hitting the lowest levels since early 2021. So that shows you what type of environment right now the housing market is in. So let's get to this real quick. The banks are still acting friendly, but for how much longer, says Hilliard. So obviously his book is fantastic, by the way. I'd highly recommend it. But he's pointing to this from Doug Hose. According to the Bank of Canada, there are a record number of borrowers who are more than 60 days behind on payments.
The pandemic, a growing number of Canadians took out mortgages that were very large relative to their incomes at variable rates with amortizations of more than 25 years. And our model suggests that the most highly indebted households saw only a small increase in their liquid assets in that time. This brings me to our second and related vulnerability, elevated house prices. Strong demand for more living space, low interest rates, inadequate supply, increased investor activity, and expectations of future increases all made for a hot market during the pandemic. House prices rose about 50% on average since the beginning of the pandemic. As Canadians return to more normal activities and interest rates rise, we expect to see some moderation in the housing market.
So this is obviously coming from the Bank of Canada's data here, and you can see that it's now hitting 2.6%. So that means 2.6% of people are 60 days behind on their payments. So this is not a good sign at all. And that is quite a high number for Canada. As you can see in the past, it hasn't hit that level going all the way back to around 2014 in over 11 years. So it's showing the stress in the Canadian financial system right now. And it might be something to do with this bubble. Canadian real estate is literally a textbook bubble. And I really like that Red Pill Rick pointed to this other chart here, because I've pointed to that chart many times, as you guys know, who've been following the channel for a long time. So if you look at the benchmark price here, it lines up kind of exactly with what you see on this classic bubble chart that we've been through many times here. And obviously the next part is this fear, capitulation, and despair phase, which obviously is probably coming down the pipe. We know that unless something massively changes, the government just infuses so much money into the system again that the banks are just pushing out money like there's no tomorrow to prop up real estate prices, then I think you're going to see a continuation of what's really going on. And people are being wrecked in Canadian real estate, but people are also defaulting as well now on a lot of their payments. And that's what's really key here. When the defaults start to rise, that's when you see the banks pulling back on lending. And that's what Hilliard is referring to there when he says the bank's friendly. How long is that going to last for? Canadian real estate price floor breaks. Prices plunged to 4-year lows. Okay, so let's take a look at what's happening. So this is the composite benchmark HPI here, and you can see that it's now at $688,000. It's down to around May 2021, April 2021 levels. But here's the key thing. This is just a HPI. It doesn't even adjust it for inflation. So people are really losing big time when it comes to adjusted for inflation, because yes, you saw this massive run up during 2020 and 2021, but I think you can take this whole run up out now and you're kind of at these levels like 2018, 2019 when you adjust for inflation, which means this whole blow off top has just been completely erased and prices have crashed because the amount of people that were transacting in the top of that bubble, as always, is always at the highest amount during that time. This time here is when people are the most leveraged, are at the most at risk, and that's why you're seeing more and more people that are defaulting. And then this came from John Flynn, which I think is really interesting to take a look at from a mortgage broker I know. I think this renewal cliff is starting. I have several clients with large mortgages between 400 and 700,000 calling over the last 2 weeks. People panicking as they're going from 2.49% to 4.36%. They all want to refi massive amounts amounts of debt to cash flow as payments too high on renewal alone. I literally have 8 to 10 files like this as we speak. Scary. Reminds me of pre-2008 frenzy of refis. So again, it's just showing you what's kind of going on. People are really starting to get fearful now, which is very interesting, because if you go back to that chart here from Red Pill Rick, that's when you see that stage which changes from the return to normal denial phase in this bull trap that happens here to the fear phase. And that's exactly what this guy is saying here, that you've got people calling who are panicking. That sounds like they're in a state of fear, and that's what you're going to start to see. Obviously, we're not at that point yet, but maybe we're at that point and it's beginning to start, because obviously it goes sideways for so long and so many people are hoping that it goes back up again. But how long before a lot of those people start thinking it's not going to go back up? I need to get out before it goes down even more. And that's when everybody piles in, inventory absolutely surges, there's no buyers, and eventually people start lowering their prices. Right now you've got no buyers, the inventory has surged, you've just got to wait for people to start drastically reducing their prices in order to try and attract people to buy. And that's really when you're going to see that fear phase hit. And it's easy to see by just looking at the data, and we'll continue to have John Flynn on, continue to talk about the data and what's going on in the housing market and what he sees. I would highly recommend that you follow him and his YouTube channel. Absolutely fantastic stuff that he's always posting on there. And then Shazzy has put about the delinquencies are back to 2009 highs, but insolvencies strangely quiet. The system isn't healthier, it's numb. People aren't filing because they can't afford to, can't pay, can't borrow, can't even go bankrupt. A silent crisis is unfolding in plain sight. With debt levels steadily increasing, non-mortgage delinquency rate has surged to its highest peak since the banking crisis. So again, and you've just got to think, remember that chart of all those banks who have extended credit to developers where nobody is buying. And that in itself is just a crisis of itself. And then you've got all the people with massive amounts of household debt who just cannot afford to roll it over at these higher interest rates, and they can't afford to take a massive loss either by selling the home. So they are in a terrible situation where they're likely going to either lose the house, go bankrupt, do a short sale. I mean, you're going to start seeing that happen more. And in fact, that will be what really brings down prices a lot quicker. And I think you'll start to see that. And then I just want to go into this because this is insane. You know, over 1.8 million residents in Alberta say they're close to bankruptcy. I mean, this is just absolutely insane from the province that just a few years ago, people were hyping up and saying, oh, it's booming, the oil industry, it's on fire, it's booming. Not wildfires, actually on fire because everything was going on all 8 cylinders. But no, this is what's really going on.
The country and residents feeling overwhelmed by their financial situation, and an estimated 1.8 million Albertans say they are close to financial insolvency. A new report from MNP shows that people in our province are bogged down in debt.
And that just goes to show what's going on here. People are just bogged down in debt. It's just the massive amount of debt, and that is why people are going towards bankruptcy, insolvency, because they've just got so much debt. So then what happens to all these lenders that lent all this debt? Because you have seen a rush over the past 3, 4, 5 years for lenders to go more and more risky. I mean, offering credit cards to people who've only been in the country like a few months and giving them bonuses just to sign up, all competing for these new residents that are coming into the country. And those people, a lot of them are leaving. We could have 1 million people leaving this year, as we discussed in last week's video, which I'll link at the end of this one, just in case you didn't catch it. So a record number of people are leaving Canada. New StatCan data reveals so over 200,000 left in Q1. So as you can see, what's going on is just completely insane. And we're just going to see a continuation of this go on. But I also want to show you this because even the mainstream media and the quote-unquote experts are even calling it out, saying, I don't think we are bouncing back. Struggling Toronto housing market could remain fragile through 2025, realtors say. And here's the thing. We've looked at the Toronto delinquency rate over this week, and it has absolutely surged. More and more people are essentially defaulting on their payments. It's one of the highest in the country for mortgage defaults. So that just goes to show what's really going on behind the scenes there. People can't afford to carry these houses, and the amount of debt that people have outstanding, they are really starting to feel the pain right now. And it's just a matter of time before that fear really hits home, and it will destroy them, and unfortunately their livelihood too. And if you have into the mix there as well, which we're already seeing, which is a worsening job market, it just makes things even worse. And I just want to continue this for a second.
The high cost of living and economic uncertainty surrounding tariffs is weighing on Canadians, but especially
it's always
Albertans.
About the tariffs.
Albertans are more likely than any other province really to report feeling anxious or stressed about their financial situation.
And nearly half of Albertans say they are $200 or less away from financial insolvency.
I mean, what does that tell you when so many people are close to bankruptcy in a province? Is that a province where things are absolutely booming and it's just a great place to be? I mean, I don't think so. And I was one of the people who called this out from the very beginning. So that's why I keep coming back to it, because I've been saying that it was complete bullshit and it was a propaganda campaign gone on by another government. Nobody asked for it in Alberta, and they actually just betrayed those Albertan people by putting their cost of living up, by inviting everybody to come on over when there's no jobs for them, and basically people are just in insane amounts of debt, and the whole facade that you're gonna have a better life, well, it's all just built on debt, and people are actually worse off in Alberta than you might think. So again, it's just going to show what's really going on. It's not just Vancouver, it's not just BC, it's not just Ontario and Toronto. It's also places like Calgary, Edmonton, and Alberta that are feeling the financial strain right now. And you can see that those housing markets have changed now in places like Alberta as well. So it's a matter of time before they're correcting, just like places like Toronto and Vancouver. So it'll be very interesting to see how this all pans out. I think we know how this is really going to go down. So anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, I'd highly recommend that you check out this video here. And then if you're looking for a VPN and also want to help out the channel, get the best VPN. The VPN that I've used for years is ExpressVPN because it's the best. Link in the description below, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.